So from the first reading, we have the book of Job, and he's saying this very dark and drab thing. Is not man's life on earth a drudgery? If you know anything about the book of Job, he's suffering greatly. He's lost all of his livestock. He's lost all of his family except for his wife. He's become very ill. He's going through all of this terrible suffering. And he's dealing with the problem that probably every one of us have faced at some point in our life of why do bad things happen to good people? Job's got these friends who come to him and say, surely you did something wrong and that's why the Lord is punishing you. And Job looks at his conscience and says, no, I don't see any reason why I should be suffering all these things. I love the Lord. I'm doing the best I can to follow him. Why am I suffering these terrible things? And the temptation, I think, as we go through life can be to medicate on these things. Maybe not literally with drugs or whatever else, but maybe alcohol, maybe Netflix, maybe trying to distract ourselves from the realities that we have to deal with. And I can understand that and appreciate that. I don't want to be thinking about all the drudgeries all day, every day. I become a very boring and depressed kind of person if I'm focused on those all the time. But what do we do when we're faced with suffering? How do we deal with these realities? I think part of the answer is from the gospel reading today, is that Jesus was intimately involved in the sufferings of those around him. He found out that Simon's mother-in-law was sick with fever, and so he goes to her and cures her. And he ends up curing a lot of sick people. He ends up casting out a lot of demons. So it's got to be Christ. Christ is the one who can actually enter into our lives and cure something. Whether it's the reason that there's problems or sufferings or drudgery or whatever is, whether it's our fault or not, Christ is the one who can enter into those situations. That's why he became incarnate. That's why he died on the cross for us, because he wants to enter into this mystery that is suffering. And he, I dare say, is the only one who can make sense of suffering. Everybody, I think, through history has been looking at trying to understand, why do we suffer? What's the point of all these things? And if we're able to unite these sufferings to Christ, then I think we can find purpose. As Jesus was doing all of these healings in the gospel reading, I believe he had to reflect on the power and difficulty of suffering. He had to reflect often on what was going on. Because after he's done all of these things, it says, rising very, very early before dawn, he left and went off to a deserted place where he prayed. That's what we have to do, Christians. We have to be able to take the sufferings that we're experiencing, whether we're experiencing them in other people as we minister to them, or experiencing them in our own hearts. And oftentimes before dawn, or whenever you have that time where you can spend in the silence, or we just have to bring these things to the Lord and reflect on them and ask the Lord to make sense of all these sufferings. Because I don't understand why certain sufferings happen in my own life, in the lives of others I'm looking at, because I only get a glimpse into a snapshot of what they're dealing with. The one who can make sense of all these things is Christ. He's the one who went through it to the depths. He's the one who even went through betrayal and death. And so he gets it, and he can make sense of all of the pain. So wherever you're at with your sufferings, I want to invite you to not allow them to overtake you, not allow them to drive you to escapism or medicate in some way, but allow them to bring you closer to Christ so he can make sense of what's going on in your own heart.